Joining me now is Daily Telegraph journalist James Willis and GXO Strategies Director Cameron Milner. Hi to both of you. Thank you so much for joining me on the show. You know, James, Albo still can't get a meeting. It's not like Donald Trump isn't meeting with world leaders. The guy's flying everywhere. He's meeting with people. But is this not another example of why our Prime Minister needs a meeting?
Well, that's right. And if you have a look at the President's schedule since taking office for the second time earlier this year and have a look at all the world leaders that he's met with, some of them multiple times, and the fact that our Prime Minister has no issue getting on a plane and has met with Chinese leaders, but also just flying to a range of global events, loves getting on, what is it, Toto or Air Force Albo, whatever it's called. I mean, this is a really obvious one. And as time goes on, with Parliament sort of back, this should have happened by now. And we can take the bushfire watch and act approach and stand back and say, well, we just hope and pray it all goes away. The reality is the meeting should have happened by now, even if that included the Prime Minister getting on his plane, flying to the White House and actually sitting down, paying dues to Donald Trump. That's the kind of diplomacy he enjoys. That should have happened. The other point I just make is that the Albanese government's safeguard mechanism, which is designed to basically punish the biggest emitters in Australia, could potentially be more damaging than any sort of tariff. So we've got to look at our own backyard, some of the policies we've put in place on the big energy users and any sort of relief we can give in that space. But certainly the whole thing has been cocked up, and just to sit back and say, well, wait and see, is really not the way to go about this.
Oh, it's ridiculous. I like the bushfire watch and act.
Totally,
I think that's absolutely spot on. And Cameron, you know, we've got Anthony Albanese. He's banking on a series of upcoming summits in the hope that he might get Donald Trump on the sidelines. But if Trump is shifting the goalposts on these tariffs, surely this is more proof that a meeting is urgent.
Oh, absolutely, Danica. And it's getting embarrassing, isn't it? I mean, isn't it shocking that Australia is not just watching and waiting? We're waiting at the back of the queue with the rest of the world. And we're supposed to have a special relationship, or at least we did as Australia and the US up until Anthony Albanese, where Anthony Albanese tried to use Donald Trump as a punchline in his election campaign. No wonder the Donald doesn't want to necessarily meet with Anthony. But Anthony Albanese is not making the effort. I mean, he's not even dropping a text message. He can't even get a phone call returned from the White House. Yet Keir Starmer had over an hour on the couch with the US president. So as you say, James, Trump is more than accessible to world leaders who want to go and meet him, world leaders who've got something to say. And Anthony Albanese is, unfortunately for Australia's sake, waiting at the back of the queue, thinking somehow that's virtuous. Well, it's not. It's just embarrassing.
Yeah, I completely agree. Now, look, you mentioned Keir Starmer, and perhaps this is why Albo is just so scared to meet with Trump, because the US president, he's not held back on his jaunt around Europe. Yesterday, he was out schooling the EU Commission's Ursula von der Leyen on renewables, but today he gave Keir Starmer a piece of his mind. Have a look.
Will you please uncensor my site? If they censor me, you're making a mistake.
The president makes it look easy dealing with illegal migration. You must be envious of his record in such a short period of time.
Well, I think we've been discussing.
I think he's done a terrible job, the mayor of London, but a nasty person.
He's a friend of mine.
No, I think he's done a terrible job.
Oh, no, he's a friend of mine. Can't say that. I mean, Keir Starmer's face throughout that whole thing, James, was priceless. The man was quivering in his boots.
Yeah, and this is the kind of diplomacy, the daily news grabs that we have never, ever seen. And I'm happy to stand corrected on that, but I don't think there's been a world leader like Donald Trump. We remember the tag team between him and JD Vance with Ukraine leader Zelensky earlier this year. We've had him show the reel of all the alleged atrocities to white farmers, to the South African leader. This is the greatest show on earth in terms of politics at the moment. And look, I think it's refreshing. I think often politicians bite their tongues and try and just be as polite as possible. He calls it like it is. He doesn't like the London mayor. There's reasons not to like him, in my view. A lot of people would have been nodding at that. Yeah. Keir Starmer's got to play the straight bat, but Donald Trump's off the chain. I think it's great. People hate him. I don't care about that. I think it's it's incredible entertainment, but also he is getting things done.
Yes.
And whether you like him or not, he has an amazing ability to get a deal done.
I agree, and he says it like it is, Cameron. I mean, gee, wouldn't it be great if some of our politicians here in Australia were so bold?
Well, yes, except I have to differ. I mean, I watched the full interview, and over that hour, it was actually quite convivial between Starmer and Trump. And in fact, Trump actually said that part of the stuff that Starmer had introduced was what Melania had actually introduced or helped sponsor in the Congress. So they did have a much better conversation than some of those clips. But one thing I would say is that Donald Trump can be nasty too. I mean, his comments from his lawyers today about Rupert Murdoch were disgusting. They basically said that they want a deposition from Rupert Murdoch in the next 14 days because he was too old and he might die. That's disgraceful. So Trump goes over the top too far sometimes. And I think his comments about Rupert were appalling and should be called out for what they are, which are totally unacceptable in the situation as well. So Trump does go too far too often, I think, too.
Oh, look, I don't disagree with that. He does go too far, but I just think the theatre of upstaging world leaders is truly fascinating. It's a whole different level of diplomacy that we've never seen before. Now, look, I want to go to Victoria now, where new laws making it harder for courts to bail out repeat offenders were tabled in Parliament today. But the catch on this is that the Attorney-General won't say when the new second strike rule will come into effect. James, we talk about youth crime. I mean, this is not just a Victoria issue. We know it's a New South Wales issue too. But the problem is it's the usual slap on the wrist. The offenders go back out, deja vu, they're back in the courts the next week. But Victoria's been really bad on this in particular.
Yeah, that's right, although Queensland has been really bad and they've tried to tighten things, and New South Wales is doing its best as well, and it all in New South Wales relates to dolly income packs and the age that you can determine someone knows that they're guilty of a crime. I mean, the issue you've got, and ultimately when you've got a victim of crime, then there needs to be punishment that's worthy, because people aren't just going to cop someone doing the wrong thing over and over again and just being let out. The issue you've got in Victoria is that there are so many warring bureaucracies that have to be consulted on these things, which are largely driven by people with woke ideologies, that ultimately they know they've got to do something, but they've got to tread lightly to get to that scenario. And that's the issue here. I hope it comes in very soon, because it's shocking all over the country. And if you break the law, doesn't matter what age you are to an extent, then you should be locked up.
I completely agree. I don't care what age these kids are. If you're a repeat offender, put them away and teach them a lesson. That's what I think. James Willis, Cameron Milner, good to speak to you both. Thanks very much for joining me on the show.